Commander Park Ji-ho stood at the window of his ship looking at the massive crystal towers floating in space before him. The towers were bigger than any building he had ever seen on Earth, and they glowed with a soft blue light that seemed to pulse. Like a heartbeat, he had dreamed of this moment for 20 years, but now that it was finally happening, he felt nothing but confusion. The message had arrived 3 weeks ago when Earth was busy rebuilding from the Titan Wars. Half the colonies were still in ruins and people were tired of fighting. They just wanted to go home and fix their broken cities. But then the aliens had sent their invitation written in perfect human language on paper that felt like silk and smelled like flowers. We formally invite the human species to join the Galactic Council as full members with all rights and privileges. Please send your representatives to the council chambers. Within 30 standard desks, Ji-ho had read that message 100 times, trying to figure out what the trick was. For over a century, humans had been sending messages to every alien species they could find, begging for trade deals, medical help, or just basic recognition. Most of the time they got no answer at all. When they did get answers, they were always the same: humans are too violent, humans are too primitive, humans need to grow up before they can play with the big kids now. Suddenly, the aliens wanted them to join their fancy club. It made no sense at all. Ambassador Kim Nari walked up beside him, adjusting the formal clothes she had been told to wear for this meeting. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who had spent most of her career trying to talk aliens into treating humans like equals instead of dangerous animals. She looked just as confused as Ji-ho. Felt something is very wrong here, she said quietly. The readings from our sensors show massive energy signatures all around this system, military buildups on every planet, weapon platforms that could destroy star systems. These people are scared of something. Dr. Li Huan joined them at the window, holding his scanner and frowning at the numbers scrolling across its screen. Huan was the smartest person Ji-ho had ever met, and if he looked worried, then everyone should be worried. The quantum energy patterns are completely chaotic, he said. Every species in this system has their weapons charged and ready to fire. That is not normal behavior for a peaceful diplomatic meeting. The human ship docked with the council station, and immediately they were surrounded by aliens who seemed way too happy to see them. Ji-ho had met aliens before during trade negotiations and border disputes, but he had never seen them act like this. The tall gray ones with 6 arms kept bowing over and over again. The rock people, who usually barely acknowledged human existence, were actually smiling. The floating jellyfish creatures were flashing colors so fast it hurt to look at them. Then Captain Song Mera stepped off the ship wearing her military uniform with all her medals from the colonial wars. She was a tough woman who had fought pirates and raiders across half the galaxy, and she did not look impressed by the alien welcome committee. Why are they acting like we just saved their lives? She muttered under her breath. We have not even talked to them yet. The group was led through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were covered in artwork from thousands of different worlds, and the ceiling showed a real time view of space above them. Everywhere they looked, there were aliens staring at them. Some were whispering in languages that sounded like music. Others were making clicking noises that their translators could not understand. A few were just standing completely still, watching the humans walk by like they were seeing ghosts. Director Cho Sun-ho, who ran Earth Intelligence Services, was taking pictures of everything with hidden cameras built into his clothes. He had studied alien behavior for 15 years, and he knew that something was very different about this situation. These species never agree on anything, he whispered to Nari, but look at them. They're all working together, all being nice to each other, all focused on us. That only happens when they have a common enemy. The council chambers were enormous. A huge round room with thousands of seats arranged in circles going up toward a domed ceiling. The seats were filled with every type of alien Ji-ho could imagine, and many he could not. Some looked like giant insects, others were made of living crystal, a few seemed to be made of pure energy floating in containment fields. All of them turned to watch when the humans entered. In the center of the room was a raised platform where the most important alien sat. Chancellor Vexstar of the Hegemony was a creature that looked like a praying mantis crossed with a diamond. He stood up when he saw the humans, and his voice echoed through speakers built into every surface of the chamber. Humans, he said, and his translator made his voice sound warm and welcoming. We have waited so long for this day. You are not just joining us as members You are joining us as our salvation." The word salvation hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Jiho felt his stomach drop because that was not the kind of language you used for a normal diplomatic meeting. That was the kind of language you used when you were drowning and someone threw you a rope. Captain Song stepped forward with her hand resting on her sidearm, which was probably not diplomatic but was definitely smart. "We appreciate the invitation," she said slowly, "but we need to understand what exactly you expect us to save you from." The aliens all started talking at once. Their voices mixed together into a noise like a storm wind. Some were shouting in fear. Others were crying sounds that their translators turned into sobs. A few were making aggressive noises and pointing at holographic displays that showed star charts with huge red sections marked as danger zones. Chancellor Vexstar raised all 6 of his arms for silence. When the chamber quieted down, he activated a hologram in the center of the platform. The image showed a galaxy map with thousands of green dots representing inhabited systems, but as they watched, nearly a quarter of those green dots turned red and then disappeared completely. "The Devourers have awakened," Vexstar said, and now his voice sounded like someone announcing the end of the world. "They sleep for millions of years and then they wake up hungry. They eat everything: stars, planets, civilizations. Nothing survives when they pass through a system, and they are coming this way." Engineer Kong Minji, who designed Earth defenses, stepped closer to study the hologram. "How long do we have?" she asked. Vexstar manipulated the display to show projected movement patterns. Based on their current speed, approximately 18 months before they reach the core worlds, 6 months before they reach human space. The chamber fell silent, except for the sound of alien breathing in a dozen different ways. Jiho looked around at thousands of faces from hundreds of different species and saw the same expression on all of them: pure, absolute terror. These were civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years. They had technology that could move planets and weapons that could crack moons, but they were all scared to death. Dr. Park Siang, the expedition historian, raised her hand like she was in school. "Can you tell us what happened to the species that fought them?" Before another alien stepped forward, Admiral Yun Taeyong from the Corvani fleet. His blue scales were pale and his huge eyes looked hollow. "They tried everything. Advanced weapons that could destroy solar systems, shields that had never failed time, manipulation devices that could rewrite history. The Devourers adapted to every attack within minutes. They turned our own technology against us. Most species that encountered them simply vanished. Others fled so far from the galaxy that we never heard from them." Again the humans exchanged glances. They had all read the files on alien technology during the trip here. Weapons that could crack planets' energy shields, that could stop supernovas, computers that could calculate the movement of every atom in a solar system. This technology was so far beyond human understanding that Earth scientists called it magic. But if magic could not stop these Devourers, then what could? President Chae-young, who represented Earth government, stepped forward. "I need to ask the obvious question," she said. "Why us? You have made it very clear for over a century that you consider humans to be primitive, violent, and unpredictable. Why would you want primitive, violent, unpredictable beings to help you fight the greatest threat in galactic history?" The silence that followed was so complete that Jiho could hear his own heartbeat. Chancellor Vexstar looked at the other alien leaders, and something passed between them, some kind of understanding that did not need words, because Admiral Yoon said finally, "Primitive, violent, and unpredictable is exactly what we need." The holographic display in the center of the council chamber came alive with images that made every human in the room take a step backward. Commander Park Jiho had seen war before. He had watched cities burn and ships explode in the darkness of space, but what the aliens were showing them was not war, it was complete erasure. Where the Kepler system used to be, there was nothing. Empty space filled with dust that had once been planets. The Arcturus colonies that housed 40 billion people had simply vanished, leaving behind only cosmic radiation. The mighty fortress world of Zerion that aliens claimed could never be destroyed was now a cloud of glowing particles drifting through the void. Director Cho Sunho studied the tactical displays with growing horror. "These machines," he said slowly, "they are not just destroying civilizations, they are deleting them from existence." No survivors, no refugees, no escape pods, nothing at all. Admiral Yun Tae-young of the Corvani fleet stepped forward. To operate the display, his hands were shaking as he pulled up battle recordings. The first engagement was at Proxima 7, he said. We sent our entire 9th Fleet, 200 ships with weapons that could crack planets' shields that had protected U.S. for 10,000 years. Watch what happened. The recordings showed sleek alien warships, arranged in perfect formation approaching what looked like a moving metal moon. The Devourer construct was covered in strange geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. When the alien fleet opened fire, their weapons struck the construct and simply disappeared. The energy beams bent away, the kinetic projectiles dissolved into nothing, and the exotic matter warheads never reached their target. Then the construct began to change. Its surface rippled like water, and suddenly it was firing the exact same weapons back at the alien fleet. But these weapons were different, somehow more focused, more deadly. The alien ships that had seemed invincible moments before were torn apart like paper in a hurricane. The entire engagement lasted 11 minutes, Admiral Yun said, his voice barely above a whisper. 200 of our finest ships destroyed, and we did not even scratch their hull. They absorbed our attacks, learned from them, and used our own technology against us, but made it better. Captain Song Mera crossed her arms and studied the recording. What about hit-and-run tactics, guerrilla warfare, asymmetric attacks? She asked. An alien that looked like a living tree made of silver metal answered. They adapt too quickly. We tried ambush tactics. They learned to predict our movements. We tried stealth technology. They developed better sensors than we had. We tried biological warfare. They became immune within hours. Every strategy, every weapon, every trick we used, they countered and improved upon. Engineer Kang Minji raised her hand. What about working together? All of you at once. Surely combined fleets would be more effective. Chancellor Vextar activated another display showing the Battle of the Core Worlds, the greatest military alliance in galactic history, she said. 57 different species, 3 million warships, technology that took millions of years to develop. The battle lasted 6 days. The Devourers lost exactly 0 constructs. We lost everything. The humans watched in stunned silence as the display showed wave after wave of alien ships attacking the Devourer fleet. The aliens had weapons that could destroy stars, devices that could fold space and time, ships that could phase between dimensions, but nothing worked. The Devourers simply absorbed each attack, analyzed it, and sent it back stronger than before. Dr. Park Saon, the expedition historian, spoke up quietly. You have been fighting them like you fight each other, but what if that is exactly what they expect? What if they were designed to counter advanced technology? The aliens in the chamber began murmuring among themselves in dozens of languages. The translation systems could not keep up with all the different conversations, but the tone was clear. They were desperate. A creature that looked like a floating crystal spoke with a voice like ringing bells. We are the temporal weavers. We have technology that can rewrite history itself. We tried to erase the Devourers from the timeline before they ever awakened. It did not work. They exist outside normal causality. They are immune to temporal manipulation. Another alien that seemed to be made of pure starlight added, we are the reality shapers. We can alter the fundamental laws of physics in localized regions. We tried to make their weapons impossible to exist. They adapted and learned to reshape reality themselves, but better than we can. Dr. Li Hao-1 was taking notes on his scanner as fast as he could write. Every species you have described has technology that humans can barely understand, he said. Weapons that can destroy solar systems, defenses that can stop anything, sciences that seem like magic to us, but they all failed. Why do you think primitive humans can succeed where you could not? The chamber fell silent again. Chancellor Vextar looked around at the other alien leaders, and Jiho could see some kind of silent communication happening between them. Finally, the Chancellor spoke. Because you fight differently than we do, he said. Every species in this chamber has evolved beyond what you call primitive warfare. We fight with logic, strategy, optimal solutions. We calculate the most efficient way to defeat our enemies and then execute that plan perfectly. Admiral Yun continued the thought. The Devourers were designed to counter logical warfare. They analyze patterns, predict strategies, and develop countermeasures, but humans. He paused and looked directly at Captain Song. You do not fight logically, do you? Song smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. No, we do not. We fight dirty. We fight scared, we fight angry, we use whatever works, and when that stops working, we try something completely different. We do not care about honor or efficiency or optimal solutions. We care about winning. President Anda Cheung stepped forward. You are asking us to command your fleets, your weapons, your technology, everything you have spent millions of years building. Yes, Chancellor Vextar said that is exactly what we are asking, and you want us to fight these devourers using human tactics, human strategies, human ways of war. The aliens all nodded or made whatever gesture their species used for agreement. Tim Che-yung looked at her fellow humans and then back at the assembled alien leaders. You realize that human warfare is everything you have spent the last century calling us barbaric, for we do not follow rules, we do not fight fair, we sacrifice anything and anyone if it means victory. We are willing to lose everything if it means the enemy loses more. That is why we need you. Admiral Yoon said, we have tried being civilized, we have tried being logical, we have tried following the rules of honorable warfare. The devourers do not care about any of that, they just want to consume everything that lives. You are the only species that might be unpredictable enough to surprise them. Engineer Kong Minji studied the tactical displays showing devourer movements. They learn from every encounter, she said, so we need to make sure they cannot learn from ours. We need to be so random, so chaotic that there are no patterns to analyze. Dr. Park Seo-young nodded slowly. Human military history is full of victories that should have been impossible, battles won by accident, by desperation, by doing exactly the wrong thing at exactly the right time. Director Cho looked around the chamber at thousands of alien faces, all watching the small group of humans with desperate hope. They want us to be monsters, he said quietly. They want us to unleash everything they have tried to evolve beyond. Captain Song stepped forward, and her voice carried to every corner of the vast chamber. The question is not whether we can defeat them, she said. The question is whether you can handle what we will have to become to try, and whether you will still want us around after we either win or lose everything in the attempt. The chamber erupted in alien voices, all talking at once. Some sounded excited, others sounded terrified, a few sounded angry. But underneath all the noise, Jiho could hear something else, hope. For the first time since the devourers had awakened, these ancient powerful civilizations had hope, and that hope rested entirely on a species they had spent over a century calling too primitive to join their club. The formal request came 3 hours later, delivered on the same silk-like paper that had brought the original invitation. Commander Park. Jiho read it twice before he started laughing. It was not a happy laugh, it was the kind of laugh that came when something was so ridiculous that your brain could not process it any other way. The Galactic Council formally requests that the human species assume complete military command of all defensive operations against the Devourer threat. This includes command authority over all fleets, all weapons, platforms, all defensive installations, and all strategic resources in Council. Space Ambassador Kim Nari looked up from her copy of the document with her eyebrows raised high. They want us to be in charge of everything, she said. Every ship, every weapon, every defense. Every species that has been calling us primitive barbarians for over a century now wants to take orders from us. Captain Song Mera was still reading her copy, shaking her head in disbelief. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, she said to the assembled alien leaders. You want the species that you have repeatedly denied membership in your council to now command your entire military. You want the people you called too violent for civilized society to lead that civilized society. And War Chancellor Vextar stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by thousands of alien representatives, all watching the small group of humans with desperate eyes. Yes, he said simply, that is exactly what we are requesting. We are placing our survival in your hands, President. Che-yung pulled up holographic records on her tablet and projected them for everyone to see. These are the diplomatic records from the last 100 years. She announced every request for aid, alliance, or basic cooperation that humanity has made to the Council. The list was long and painful. Trade agreements rejected because humans were too aggressive, military cooperation denied because human tactics were too brutal, medical assistance withheld because humanity needed to learn restraint. Requests for technology sharing dismissed because humans were not ready for advanced sciences. Dr. Li Huan read from the official council statement issued just 5 years earlier. Humanity represents a clear danger to galactic peace. Their violent nature and unpredictable behavior make them unsuitable for membership in any civilized organization. We recommend continued isolation until such time as they demonstrate significant cultural evolution. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Every alien present had voted on these decisions or supported leaders who had made them. They had spent decades treating humans like dangerous animals that needed to be contained, and now they were begging those same dangerous animals to save them. General Kim Dong-yoon stepped forward wearing his uniform from the colonial wars. His face was scarred from fighting pirates and raiders across human space, and his voice carried the authority of someone who had never lost a battle. Where was this respect when our colonies on New Seoul were dying of red plague and you had the cure? He asked. Where was this partnership when the syndicate pirates were slaughtering human settlements and we begged for help? Ambassador Wang Jisoo activated her own holographic display, showing colony after colony that had fallen to disease, starvation, or enemy action while the aliens watched and did nothing. Kepler Station lost 14,000 people to vacuum exposure because your ships refused to respond to our distress calls, she said. New Tokyo was abandoned because we could not get basic medical supplies that every other species takes for granted. The alien delegates were shifting uncomfortably in their seats, or whatever they used for seating the proud ethereal collective beings of pure energy who considered themselves the most enlightened species in the galaxy. Had actually suggested in an official report that humanity should be contained for the good of galactic peace. Director Cho Sun-ho pulled up intelligence reports from human space. Every request denied, every door slammed shut, every time we were told we were not good enough to join your club. He said, now you are facing extinction, and suddenly we are your saviors. It is convenient how perspective changes when you need something, but as the humans continued reviewing their grievances, something strange started happening in the data. They were examining their own military records, showed success rates that seemed almost impossible, survival statistics that defied logic, victory margins that made no sense when compared to their resources and technology. Colonel Lee Ji-won noticed it. First, our casualty rates, she said slowly, looking at the numbers scrolling past. Even when we lose battles, we lose fewer people than we should. When we win battles, we win by margins that should not be possible given our technology level. Engineer Kang Minji was studying tactical reports from the Titan Wars. How did we hold the Centauri system with 30 ships against 300? She wondered aloud. How did we break the siege of Alpha Station when every tactical computer said it was impossible? Dr. Park Seong found the answer in the historical analysis reports. While other species develop better technology, humanity developed better survival instincts, she said. Every other civilization grew comfortable with their advantages. Humans never stopped learning how to win when everything was against them. The alien leaders were watching this realization dawn on the human delegation with something like wonder. Admiral Yoon Tae-young spoke quietly. You have been fighting impossible odds your entire existence as a spacefaring species, he said. Every expansion, every colony, every trade route you established was accomplished despite having inferior technology, inferior numbers, and no allies. Captain Song looked around the chamber at thousands of representatives from civilizations that commanded technology beyond human understanding, and we not only survived, but thrived, she said. We built an interstellar civilization using ships that barely worked, weapons that other species considered antiques, and pure stubborn refusal to give up. Chancellor Vexstar activated a holographic display showing human expansion over the last century. Your species has the highest survival rate per capita of any civilization in the galaxy, he said. Your colonies succeed where others fail. Your fleets win battles they should lose. Your people adapt to environments that kill other species. President Im Chae-young stared at the data in front of her. We thought you were keeping us out because we were not good enough, she said slowly, but you were keeping us out because you were afraid of us. The chamber erupted in defensive alien voices claiming that fear had nothing to do with their decisions, but the humans were no longer listening to the protests. They were studying the battle records, the survival statistics, the impossible victories that had marked human expansion across known space. Ambassador Kim Nari looked directly at Chancellor Vexstar. You need us to command your forces because we are the only species that knows how to fight a war where losing means extinction, she said. Everyone else in this chamber has been playing by rules that assume survival is guaranteed. Humans have never had that luxury. General Kim Dong-yoon crossed his arms and studied the alien faces around him. So now the question becomes whether we are willing to save the people who spent a century telling us we were not worth saving. The humans gathered in a circle discussing in voices too low for the translation systems to pick up. The aliens watched nervously as their potential saviors debated among themselves. The fate of galactic civilization rested on the decision of a species they had rejected, dismissed, and insulted for over a century. Finally, Commander Park Ji-ho stepped forward to address the council. We will give you our answer, he said, but not today. We need time to discuss this among ourselves and with our government back on Earth. How much time? Chancellor Vextar asked urgently. Every day we delay the devourers consume more systems. Ji-ho looked around the chamber one more time, taking in the desperate faces of beings who commanded power beyond imagination but were helpless against an enemy that could learn from any attack. 3 days. He said, we will have our answer in 3 days. As the human delegation filed out of the chamber, the aliens were left to contemplate the bitter irony of their situation. The species they had considered too primitive to join their club might be the only thing standing between them and complete extinction, and that decision rested entirely on whether humanity could forgive over a century of rejection, long enough to save the people who had rejected them. 3 days felt like 3 years to the assembled alien delegates who waited in the council chambers while reports arrived of 2 more star systems falling to the devourer advance. The Caridian Empire lost their mining worlds in the Outer Rim. The Peaceful Harmony Collective watched helplessly as their meditation planets were consumed by hungry machines that cared nothing for enlightenment or spiritual achievement. Commander Park Ji-ho walked back into the chamber carrying a document that would reshape galactic civilization forever. Behind him came the rest of the human delegation, their faces showing no emotion at all. The aliens leaned forward in their seats, tentacles raised, eye stalks extended, energy forms brightening with anticipation. We have made our decision, Ji-ho announced, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space. We will do it. The chamber erupted in cheers, whistles, clicks, and sounds that human ears could not identify. Relief flooded through thousands of alien faces as the possibility of survival became real again. But Ji-ho was not finished speaking. However, he continued, and the chamber fell silent again. We are not doing this for you. We are doing this because extinction is extinction, and we will not allow any sentient species to face that fate, regardless of how they have treated us in the past. But we have conditions that are completely non-negotiable. Ambassador Kim Nari stepped forward, holding her own copy of the human demands. The first condition is immediate full citizenship for every human being in known space, she said. All humans everywhere will have the same rights, protections, and privileges as any other member species. No second-class status, no probationary periods, no gradual integration. The aliens murmured among themselves. This was not unreasonable, but it meant officially acknowledging that they had been wrong to exclude humanity for over a century. The second condition, Dr. Lia Huan announced, is complete access to all medical, agricultural, and infrastructure technologies that could have prevented human suffering in the past. Every cure, every food production method, every life support system that you denied us will be freely shared immediately. Chancellor Vextar nodded slowly. This would cost the advanced civilizations trillions in lost technology licensing, but lives were more important than profit margins. Captain Song Myra read the third condition, full autonomy for all human colonies and settlements. No council oversight, no cultural interference, no demands that we change our society to meet your standards. We govern ourselves the way we choose to govern ourselves. This caused more discussion among the alien delegates. Several species had strong opinions about human government methods, but they were in no position to argue. President Im Se-young delivered the fourth condition, complete command authority over all military forces during this crisis. She said, every ship, every weapon, every defensive platform will follow human orders without question or delay. We will implement any tactics we deem necessary, even if they violate your moral codes or traditional concepts of honorable warfare. The chamber fell completely silent. This was the condition they had hoped for and feared at the same time. They needed human leadership, but human warfare was legendary for its brutality and complete disregard for civilized combat rules, but we are not finished yet, General Kim Dong-yoon said, stepping forward. The fifth condition is that after this crisis ends successfully or unsuccessfully, humanity will have the right to withdraw from the Galactic Council at any time for any reason with no consequences or retaliation. The aliens looked confused. Why would they want the right to leave when they had just gained membership? Dr. Kim Young-soo explained the human perspective with clinical precision. Because joining an organization that spent over a century rejecting us feels less like an honor and more like desperation, he said. We want to know that we can walk away if this partnership does not work out to our satisfaction. Ambassador Wang Jisu read the final condition. The sixth and final condition is a formal apology from the Galactic Council for over a century of discrimination, isolation, and deliberate harm caused by your refusal to provide aid during multiple humanitarian crises. This caused the biggest reaction, yet some aliens looked ashamed, others looked angry, a few seemed confused about why an apology mattered when survival was at stake. Chancellor Vextar stood up slowly, looking around the chamber at thousands of representatives from hundreds of different species. Does the Council accept these conditions? He asked. The vote was not even closed. Every species voted to accept except for two. The Architectural Guild abstained, claiming they needed more time to consider the philosophical implications of apologizing for decisions their predecessors had made. The Peaceful Unity actually voted against the proposal, stating that victory achieved through barbaric human methods would be worse than noble defeat, but desperation won out and the final vote was recorded in the Council archives. Humanity was officially not just a member of the Galactic Council, but its supreme military commander with authority over every defense in known space. As the humans began reviewing star charts and fleet positions, Colonel Lee Ji-won asked the question that everyone was thinking. Are you really going to be able to take orders from beings you consider primitive and violent? Admiral Yoon Tae-young answered honestly. We do not have a choice, he said. Our pride got us into this situation where we face extinction with no solutions. Our pride cannot save us now. Only you can. Engineer Kang Mingji was already studying defensive positions and resource allocation. We are going to need to completely restructure your entire military philosophy, she said. No more honor guards, no more ceremonial formations, no more fighting fair. Everything you think you know about warfare is about to change. Director Cho Sun-ho was reviewing intelligence reports on Devour movements and capabilities. We have 18 months to prepare, he announced. Maybe less if they accelerate their advance. That means every day counts, every decision matters. Every resource must be optimized for survival, not comfort. Dr. Park Seo-young looked up from historical battle records showing previous encounters with the Devourers. Every species that faced them before tried to fight them with superior technology, she said. We are going to fight them with superior tactics, even if those tactics horrify you. Captain Song addressed the entire chamber with words that would be remembered for generations. We do not fight to win glory or proof points, she said. We fight to survive, and survival means using every advantage, exploiting every weakness, and never ever giving up even when logic says we should. The assembled aliens listened to these words with growing unease. They had asked for human military leadership, but they were beginning to understand what that really meant. It meant abandoning everything their civilizations had spent millions of years developing. In terms of ethical warfare, President An Se-young delivered the final warning to the Council. You wanted monsters to fight your monsters, he said. That is exactly what you are going to get. We will become everything you ever accused us of being. Ruthless, unpredictable, willing to sacrifice anything for victory. The question is whether you will still want us around when this is over. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The aliens had thought they were hiring human expertise. They were beginning to realize they had unleashed something that could not be controlled or contained. As the human delegation began coordinating with military commanders from across the galaxy, Admiral Yoon quietly asked Ambassador Kim Nari-do, you really think you can defeat the Devourers? Nari smiled, and it was not a reassuring expression. We do not know if we can defeat them, she replied. But we absolutely know how to make them pay for every system they take, and sometimes making the enemy pay is enough. What happened next violated every principle of civilized warfare that had evolved over millions of years of galactic conflict. Chief Engineer Kang Minji stood in front of a room full of alien scientists and military leaders explaining tactics. That made several species physically ill just hearing about them. You have been trying to fight them with your technology, she said, pointing to holographic displays showing failed alien battles. But technology can be studied, analyzed, and countered. What if we do not use technology at all? What if we use something they cannot predict or adapt? To the alien scientists looked confused. How could any species fight without technology? Admiral Yun Taeyong asked. What else is there? Chaos Captain Song. Mara replied with a smile that made the peaceful species in the room take a step backward. Pure random. Unpredictable chaos mixed with a complete willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. The human strategy was simple in concept and absolutely terrifying in practice. Instead of meeting the devourers with advanced weapons they could analyze and counter, humanity would use the one thing the ancient machines had never encountered in their million years of existence: complete unpredictability. Combined with suicidal determination, General Kim Dong-yoon issued the first order that sent shockwaves through every civilized species in the galaxy. All human ships, stations, and colonies were to be rigged with self-destruct charges that could be triggered remotely, but not for surrender, for attack. They turning everything into weapons, whispered the ethereal collective. Representative to his aid, mining stations become kinetic projectiles, hospital ships become biological warfare platforms. Even civilian transports are being converted into guided missiles. This is madness, but the madness worked. The first engagement between human forces and a devourer construct took place in the Vega system. Commander Park Ji-ho personally led a fleet of converted cargo ships that had been loaded with experimental weapons, nuclear devices, and several tons of human artwork. The devourer construct scanned the approaching ships, trying to analyze their technology and develop countermeasures, but there was no technology to analyze. The cargo ships were barely spaceworthy. Their weapons were primitive by galactic standards. Their tactics made no sense. When the human ships got close enough, Ji-ho gave the order that changed galactic warfare forever. All ships ram the target, broadcast everything we have at maximum volume, and detonate everything that can explode. The results were unprecedented. The devourer construct absorbed the kinetic impacts and began analyzing the primitive weapons, but it could not process the chaos. Human ships were exploding in random patterns, broadcasting music, poetry, stories, and mathematical equations all at the same time. The construct tried to find a pattern to counter, but there was no pattern. For the first time in recorded history, a devourer construct was damaged. It was not destroyed, but its perfect surface scarred, and its movement patterns became erratic. The machines that had adapted to every logical attack in galactic history could not adapt to beautiful madness. Dar Li-hen coordinated the next phase of human strategy, convincing other species to abandon their perfect formations and optimal tactics. Instead of fighting like advanced civilizations, they would fight like humans, with desperate creativity and absolute conviction that death was better than surrender. The battle for the Proxima Centauri system became legendary across known space. Captain Song led a combined fleet of human and alien vessels, but instead of traditional ship-to-ship combat, she ordered every vessel to broadcast their species' most important cultural achievements while ramming devourer constructs. Alien crews who had spent their careers following precise tactical protocols suddenly found themselves screaming war songs while flying their ships directly into enemy positions. The devourers tried to analyze the attacks, but the cultural broadcasts overloaded their processing systems with pure emotional chaos. Engineer Kang Minji developed what became known as the entropy protocol. Instead of using the same weapon twice, human forces would constantly change their attack methods. One day they used kinetic projectiles, the next day they used biological agents, the day after that they used gravity manipulators. Stolen from destroyed alien ships but modified with human improvements, the modifications made no logical sense. From an engineering standpoint, they were often downgrades that reduced efficiency and power, but they were unpredictable, and that unpredictability was more valuable than raw power. Director Cho Sun-ho established intelligence networks that deliberately spread false information about human tactics. Even human allies received incorrect data about planned attacks. The goal was to make sure that if the devourers captured any information, it would be useless or misleading. Most shocking development was when Dr. Kim Young-soo convinced the temporal weavers to stop trying to rewrite history and instead embrace temporal chaos. Human forces began attacking Devour positions from multiple time streams, simultaneously creating causality loops that hurt to think about. We are not trying to make sense, the humans explained to confused alien scientists. We are trying to make the Devourers waste processing power trying to understand things that cannot be understood. The tide of war began to turn, not because humanity had better technology or superior numbers, but because they were the first species the Devourers had encountered that treated warfare as art rather than science. Every battle was different, every attack was unique. Every strategy was designed to be used exactly once. Colonel Lee Ji-won led the defense of the core worlds using tactics that violated several laws of physics and most principles of military science. She ordered ships to fly in patterns based on human dance choreography, used weapons in ways their designers never intended, and coordinated attacks using timing based on musical rhythms rather than tactical optimization. The Devourers found themselves facing an enemy that could not be predicted, analyzed, or countered. Every time they developed a response to human tactics, the humans would abandon those tactics completely and try something totally different. Admiral Yoon Tae-young, who had initially been skeptical about human methods, found himself commanding a fleet that painted their ships with colors that had emotional significance rather than tactical value. He led charges while broadcasting ancient alien poetry and discovered that cultural chaos was more effective than any weapon his species had ever developed. The final phase of the war came when Dr. Park Seo-young proposed the ultimate human solution. Instead of trying to destroy the Devourers, they would make existence itself too chaotic for the machines to process. Human forces began deliberately breaking the laws of physics in localized areas using stolen alien technology in ways that created paradoxes. Reality became unreliable. In battle zones, time flowed backwards in some areas while moving double speed in others. Gravity worked sideways. Energy weapons fired music instead of beams. Ships existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Devourers faced something they had never encountered in a million years of conquest, an enemy that was willing to break the universe itself rather than surrender. The ancient machines that had consumed countless civilizations found themselves unable to adapt to attacks that made no sense, strategies that violated logic, and enemies that treated their own survival as less important than victory. For the first time since they had awakened, the Devourers began to retreat. They pulled back from contested systems, abandoned positions they had held, and started fleeing toward the edge of known space. The species that had never been stopped by any conventional force was running from an enemy that refused to be conventional. The galaxy watched in amazement as the impossible became reality. Humanity and their alien allies had not just stopped the Devourers, they had actually driven them away using tactics that would be studied for generations, assuming anyone survived to study them. But victory came at a price. Human forces had suffered massive casualties, and the surviving humans were changed by what they had been forced to become. They had saved the galaxy by becoming everything the Council had once accused them of: being ruthless, unpredictable, and willing to sacrifice anything for victory. As the last Devourer constructs disappeared into the void between galaxies, the question remained whether the beings who had unleashed human warfare would be comfortable with what they had created. The war against the Devourers lasted 18 months and cost the lives of 3 billion sentient beings across dozens of species, but it ended not with a whimper, but with a spectacular explosion as Commander Park Ji-ho personally triggered the collapse of an entire dimensional fold, sending the surviving Devourer fleets screaming back into the void between galaxies. The victory celebrations lasted 3 days across every inhabited world, and the galaxy statues were erected in human honor. Songs were composed about human bravery. Monuments were built to commemorate the species that had saved galactic civilization from extinction. The Council formally declared humanity the greatest heroes in recorded history. Medals poured in from every corner of known space: the Order of Galactic Merit, the Cross of Temporal Valor, the Crystal of Infinite Courage. Awards that had never been given to any single species were handed out to humans by the thousands. Chancellor Vextar personally presented President Im Chae-young with the eternal gratitude of all civilized worlds, but something had changed in humanity during those 18 months of desperate warfare. The humans who had entered the conflict as hopeful members of galactic society emerged. As something darker, something harder, they had been forced to become everything the Council had once accused them of being, and the transformation had left scars that no metal could heal. The offers came immediately after the celebrations ended. Every major species wanted to hire human military advisors, human tactical consultants, human strategic planners. Entire star systems offered to become human protectorates, the same beings who had spent over a century calling humans too violent for civilized society now begged them to stay and provide permanent security. "We will give you anything," Chancellor Vextar said to the human delegation. "Technology beyond your wildest dreams, worlds of your own, choosing resources unlimited by any previous treaty. You have earned a place of honor among us." But President Im Chae-young stood before the council chamber with an expression that made every alien in the room uncomfortable. She looked like someone who had seen too much done, too much sacrifice, too much for people who had never deserved it. "We came to you seeking partnership and found only condescension," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. "We saved you when you needed us, but that does not erase the past the Council needed monsters to fight monsters, and that is exactly what we became." The human delegation had already begun packing their belongings, even as alien representatives frantically tried to negotiate new treaties, trade agreements, and permanent alliances. Species that had ignored humanity for centuries suddenly could not imagine existing without them. Ambassador Kim Nari addressed the desperate aliens with words that cut like knives. "You want us to stay because we are useful now," she said, "but usefulness is not the same as acceptance. You did not want us when we needed you. You only want us now that you need us." Dr. Lee Hwan pulled up statistical displays showing the true cost of victory. Human casualty rates were 3 times higher than any other species, because human tactics required human sacrifices. Human colonies had been abandoned to provide resources for the war effort. Human families had been broken apart to staff the military campaigns that saved alien worlds. "We gave everything to win this war," Dr. Park Seong announced. "We turned ourselves into weapons, into monsters, into the very things you accused us of being. And we did it to save people who had spent over a century telling us we were not worth saving." The aliens tried everything they could think of to convince humanity to stay. Economic incentives that would make Earth the richest world in the galaxy, political arrangements that would give humans permanent seats on every major council, cultural exchanges that would spread human influence across known space. General Kim Dong-yoon listened to all the offers with the patience of someone who had heard too many promises before. "Where were these generous offers when our colonies were starving?" he asked. "Where was this respect when our people were dying of diseases you could easily cure? Where was this partnership when we were fighting pirates alone in the dark?" Captain Song Myra delivered what became known as the human ultimatum to the assembled council. "You have our answer to your question about whether we will stay and be part of your civilization," she said. "The answer is simple. We already have our own civilization, and it is time we return to building it instead of saving yours." The final moment came when the human ships prepared to depart Council space. Admiral Yoon Tae-young of the Corvani fleet made one last desperate plea to Commander Jiho. "Please, humanity must reconsider. The galaxy needs your strength, your leadership, your protection. What if the Devourers return? What if some new threat emerges that only human tactics can defeat?" Jiho turned back one last time before boarding his transport, and his words became legend across human space. "Then you will face it the same way every other species in the galaxy has faced threats for millions of years, together with courage and with the determination to survive. We have taught you that much. At least the human fleet jumped to hyperspace without looking back, leaving behind a galaxy that was simultaneously grateful for their salvation and terrified of their absence." In the days that followed, alien governments tried desperately to maintain communication with the departing humans, sending delegation after delegation to negotiate their return, but the transmissions from human space were brief and final. "Thank you for the membership offer. We decline. Thank you for the trade agreements. We are not interested. Thank you for the alliance proposals. We wish you well, but we are done back." On Earth, as reports arrived of alien delegations still camping outside human space trying to convince anyone to negotiate, Dr. Kim Young-soo made an observation that